I sense someone who did not like and subscribe. Greetings and hello there, everyone. It is I, your Star Wars dad. I'm here with another Dad Talks. I'm here today with Deacon. Give us a hello, Deacon.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Alrighty, there he is. Deacon is in our guild right now. And what we're going to cover at the end of this video, we're going to talk about Rise of the Empire territory battles, because I was in charge of it for a while, and then Deacon kind of spoke up. He's got some experience. He's willing to do the math, which I was not willing to do, and so he has now taken over Rise of the Empire. So we're going to talk about that at the end of the video. But first, I want to get into the normal, everyday dad talk stuff, just to kind of take a look at his account and see what's going on. So. Deacon, tell me your tell me your Galaxy Hero story. When did you come to the game? What are your farming goals, and etc. etc.
Yeah, so I started way back in 2016, like right after the hard launch, and I was playing with a bunch of real friends. So they picked it up in beta. They asked me, you like Star Wars? You wanna join us? And I picked it up and was hooked ever since. Like even back in the day, like I was one of the first guys in the guild to do the Darth Vader Tebow cheese solo for the
Yeah.
pit raid. Uh, running the top tier Grand Arena team of a wedge lead with Biggs and just junk rebels. Um, and so that was my first account. Unfortunately, I lost that account in the process of a divorce. It was attached to my wife's iTunes account, or my ex-wife's iTunes account.
Oh no.
Um, but luckily, that was in 2017, so I lost a year, and like at the time, I think it was the level cap was 80, so I lost a level 80 gear 10 Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then restarted a new account, played with the same friends, got up and running, and basically been doing my best to get 600 tickets for whatever guild I'm in every day since then.
Yeah, and so yeah, if you lost an account that early, it probably felt horrible at the time, but in the in the long run of things, it probably didn't hurt you all that bad. Maybe the first 6 months to a year was tough, but then after that, you're probably caught up.
No, no, exactly, and sometimes divorces are worth it, and losing the losing the account seemed pretty tragic, but this is at a time when they started shifting all the metas, and just before the release of the Sith Empire and Jedi Knight Revan, and then Gas, so the meta was just constantly evolving.
Yep.
So it was more of an opportunity to just start fresh, shift focus, instead of worrying about what am I going to do with all this other stuff in the background.
Yeah. Now let's talk about your guild history. How long have you been in Knights of Ren? It hasn't been that long, has it?
No, it's been about 2 months. I think
Okay.
I started watching your streams at a impasse in the guild that I was in at the time, and the leadership had burnt out, and it was just after Rise of the Empire started, and people were getting frustrated with trying to Relic 5, Relic 6 Ugnaughts and all those junk tunes. Um, and they weren't a very social guild, and I was getting pretty close to burning out myself. And then just seeing the community in your YouTube chat, participating in that, I was like, you know what, maybe this will be good. The guild I was in was about 450 million GP, so like right off the bat, we were at 27 stars in Rise of the Empire, but it wasn't worth the it just wasn't an enjoyable environment to be in. And then moving over into House of Ren, like I've never been attached to Discord so much in my life, participating in the conversation and everything.
Yeah, well, you came in, and we could tell right away you knew what you were doing with Rise of the Empire, and you had some know-how there, and I really needed the help. So that it's been a huge help for us. We've increased from, I think we did 13 or 14 stars the very first time, and we did 21 last time, so it was a huge deal. Um, but it sounds like you weren't in much of a leadership position before. Would that be accurate?
No, so like the original guild that um my friends and I had started, I was in a leadership position in that one, but we were relatively small. Then we got absorbed into another guild, and that guild got absorbed into another guild, and just never really had any interest in a leadership position. But I
Mm-hmm.
was also playing other online games, and I think at the time I had picked up that the Disney Clone, and was playing that a
Yeah.
bit, and I didn't have time to focus. Well, I've dropped all the rest of that, and it's just Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes now. So when the opportunity arose with House of Ren, I was like, you know what? It's 7 days every 2 weeks of just nonstop stress, and outside of that, I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, and for me, the big reason I've always enjoyed House of Ren and the guild that I'm in, because I played for years at a really high level. I was in some of the top 10 guilds in the game. Micromanaging TW, micromanaging TB, and I really enjoyed that for a long time. But then it just eventually fade that joy faded. But being in House of Ren, where we all work together and we all push toward goals and we require people to participate, but there's no farms forced on anybody, and we don't we manage our TW. We're like 104 in TWs, like all time.
Yeah.
But we don't like tightly manage it. We don't have to enter our battles. So that's it's like this. It's a serious but casual guild, and I've always enjoyed it for that. So our leader does a great job of running that stuff.
Well, and we're kind of in the opposite of some other guilds where we're trying to get people to pump the brakes on, well, what should I farm next so we can, what should I take to Relic 6 next? Should I take Zalbar to Relic 6? Are you going to use a Relic 6 Zalbar? No. We're at 300 million GP. It's not going to get us any extra stars.
Yeah.
Just do what works for you.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll be using a Relic 6 Zalbar next month if the Great Dragon Raid comes out. So who knows? Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask you one more question before we get into Rote here. Tell me your Star Wars story. When did you when did you fall in love with Star Wars, or fall in like, or how were you exposed to Star Wars?
So growing up in the 80s, so I'm about 9 years younger than you are. So I was out for the theatrical release of Return of the Jedi, but I grew up as a Star Trek guy. My mom was a fan of the original series, and then when Next Generation came out as like a weekly something to sit down and watch that wasn't cartoons, that was my gig. And I followed Star Trek through the Next Generation, through the movies, through Deep Space Nine, and then when Voyager dropped, I watched it for a couple of seasons, and then I just couldn't really get into the story, but got more into Star Wars. So Star Trek was always a very utopian future of, if there's no disease and there's no money, everybody gets along great, except for with the Klingons and the Romulans. But Star Wars was a much better representation of what people are actually like. The once you become all powerful, you become all corrupt, and you start making enemies, and then those enemies have to fight a dirty fight to try and remove you from that power, and then the cycle continues. And it was a much more mature story. So as I got more mature, I became more and more a fan of Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So like I graduated high school in '99, so the same year that the prequel trilogies started coming out, and I didn't really like them. I thought they were, I thought that George Lucas was doing what he wanted to do, and he was making films that the next generation would enjoy and his children would enjoy. But then I started getting into the books and reading through the books, the stories of, let's follow Luke Skywalker from the end of Return of the Jedi all the way to the New Jedi Order and the next generation. I thought those were great. Um, so I just completely pushed Star Trek off to the side and didn't actually pick it up until Paramount released the new Picard series, and just focused all of my fandom on Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Disney threw all those Jedi tales away. Anyway, sorry, side topic. Um, so I kind of relate, and I was big into Next Generation. I love Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Wars is my thing, but I really enjoy Star Trek. But I kind of relate the Star Wars audience or consumer today a lot to that Star Trek consumer in the '80s, where they were so into the details and canon and all. Hey, on episode 4, 20 minutes in, you fought this, and I go back to the SNL, an old SNL where William Shatner came on it, and they were all asking him questions like that, and he's like, I don't know. You people need to get a life.
Exactly.
Yeah, not to insult anybody, but I think that Star Wars is kind of in that spot right now.
Well, and like I enjoyed aspects of the prequel trilogy. Like I'm not gonna lie, I sat in the theater opening day for episode 7, and I cried like a baby when the Millennium Falcon flew again for the first time in
Yeah.
30 years. Um, like what I'm not a fan of is the gatekeeping side of it. Like if and you see that on the online communities all the time. Like I don't like this, so nobody should like this. Like I didn't
Yeah.
like the stories. I don't like Ray's character development. I think Daisy Ridley did a phenomenal job with what she was handed. Um, but um, like the recent episode of The Mandalorian, like I I giggled like a school child seeing Lizzo and Jack Black um, sitting at the head of the table. Like there's that level of fan service, and I'll just enjoy the fan service
Yeah.
without worrying about everything else. And that's what's the most recent season of Picard is killing it on. Is I don't even care what the story is. It's just an hour and a half every week of pure fan service.
Yeah, that Mandalorian to me has kind of just turned into fan service, which if you enjoy, you enjoy. But I agree with you on the saying, and I think it's a common in our society in general. All the gatekeeping, like I say this thing, and I think this thing, and it's right. And if anybody else thinks different, you're scum. And it's a it's a really destructive take on stuff in general. I'm not a big fan of that. So hey,
And it's
you're
similar to in the guild or in the game. Like, okay,
yeah,
you love Ewoks and you have a full team of Relic 7 Ewoks. Great
yep.
for you, but
But
I don't necessarily want you coming into my guild with just Relic 7 Ewoks.
right, right. Hey, just a heads up before we talk about Rote, your Embo mods are messed up. You got 3 crit damage mods and you don't have a 4th one, so just FYI.
Yeah. Yeah. So mods is something that being a what a like 8 7 year veteran of the game, like when mods first came out, it was just speed. So I all I did was ever relic or mod anybody for speed,
Mm-hmm.
and then found that certain to like my Jedi Master Kenobi's faster than my cat, like considerably faster. But it works because if I pass the damage immunity and the cooldown reset to her, I can get Kenobi up to 50% of his ultimate slightly faster, which allows me to then blow away the enemy cat after they've killed my General Kenobi. And then there are just a bunch of teams, like if being in Kyber 2, I've got a whole bunch of teams and a whole bunch of tunes that are like, if I hit a wall and I need to kill one character at a time across several
Mm-hmm.
battles, those are those guys. Like it was about 2 weeks ago, I finally fixed the mods on CLS. Not because I hadn't been watching and listening to your streams, but it's because I got the Chupio Datacron and finally took the entire team up to Relic 5, Chupio up to Relic 7 so that I could use the Datacron. Uh,
I
not
gotcha.
because I ever cared about how competent of a leader and the
Right.
sharing of stats on the team was.
I got you, man. Yeah, it was true back in the day, man. Speed mods were the only thing that mattered on every character, and they've done a good job in the last probably 2 or 3 years of fixing that. But it was that way for a long, long time. Hey, let's talk about Rote, Rise of the Empire territory battles. So, generally speaking, and I'm pulling it up here on the screen just to show where we are right now. We're in phase 2 right now. We 3-star dark side in phase 1, and we preloaded light side and neutral. We're gonna 3-star both of those. Talk about your the theories or how you're putting together Rote for the guild and what your thought process is there. Just to help some folks out.
So the first thing that I did when we were when you were still responsible for the territory battles was go through and find those ops that we 100% couldn't fill, because I really enjoy Rise of the Empire because I have an opportunity. I think I'm at 9.3 million GP now. I have an opportunity to use as much of my roster as possible to achieve the maximum effect on the combat missions. So when you need 15 Malguses across in a single phase, if we don't have the opportunity to even potentially complete one of the ops, I'm like, well, I would like to use my Malgus with my Supreme Emperor team. Otherwise, SEE just dies because Malik is not an effective enough tank at Relic 5. What I enjoy about the entire process is it that there's a lot of theory crafting that goes into GAC and team comps and that, but like Rise of the Empire is the preeminent min max uh, um, aspect of the game. And especially for smaller guilds, the amount of coordination of everybody's roster that's needed to maximize the rewards, like you have to hit as many operations as possible. You have to complete as many combat missions as possible, and you have to phase everything to where you get the maximum benefit with the minimum amount of wastage of GP. And like that first and foremost is like the operations. Like when you get 250,000 points for finishing two waves of combat missions, and you could do that 3 times in a zone. That's 750,000 points. You finish one op, it's 10 million, 11 million, and then 13 and a half, I think is what it is. So being able to identify when and where the ops finished, that's what pushed us over from because when we got the 19, it was I messed up and didn't properly hold my bend solo to be able to fill the 2 that are required in light side for phase 2 and the 2 that are required in neutral for phase 2, and that cost us for those 4 operations 40 million GP, and that was the difference between hitting 1 star, I think it was 1 star dark side for the final phase, and then getting the 3 stars.
Yeah, and there's a lot of manual work involved in what you're talking about, and basically what I'm reading and what you're saying is, hey, we need 6 Malguses at Relic 6 in phase 2. If I just throw if we have 3 of them and we throw all those into ops or platoons, just trying to get it done and taking a shot at it, well then we don't have those Malguses available for combat missions, and if we don't get 11 million because we didn't fill the op anyway, we just cost ourselves, 250,000 or 300,000 or whatever in combat missions, and 5 of those is a million. So it makes a difference. Each one, it's the incremental differences that matter, which takes a lot of manual work from you to. I don't have the time, and I don't have the honestly. I probably just don't have the patience to pull all that up and figure out each one of those, that goes. But it's been a huge help for us. So, am I reading that right? What you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it, the bane of my existence right now is that Boba Fett side of Django at Relic 6 and 7, because he's needed in almost every operation, all of the mid and dark side at the same time. So if you put him in a platoon that's not possible to be filled, he's not going in an op that is possible to be filled, but we don't have enough as a backup. So it just takes both of those operations off the table entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's a simple idea, but it's tough to track, and there are bots out there you can use in Discord to pull up and see who in the guild has what, and I assume you're using those, right? When you pull up and see how many of each character we've got.
Yeah, so um, I use EchoBot or EchoBase, and what I do is it just came out of it's still in the beta, but it's relatively functional for the sandbag. It wasn't before, so guilds would just have to either 3-star everything or get as many stars as they could, move on to the next phase, and it would tell you what operations weren't possible to be filled. But now it tells you what operations you can fill if you spread out the deployment across multiple phases. The problem is it always assumes that you're going to finish an operation right before you um, star the zone. So it automatically does everything I needed to do for day 1. But then what I have to do going into day 2 is take what it's assigned, compare it to what we've already been able to accomplish, and then manually do the assignments. For a massive guild, it's super easy because they fill all the ops. For a tiny guild, it's also super easy because they're only ever doing one
Yeah,
zone at a time.
right.
It's a pain in the butt for a guild that's at our size, because like we sandbag neutral for 3 phases while we finish getting stars on dark side dark side and light side. So you
Yeah.
have to go in, cross-reference with SWGOH.GG and be like, okay, no, now we can do this, and I think we're actually going to be able to get 2 more ops done this time than we were last time.
Awesome. Yeah, and just so everybody's aware, if you're looking at extra territories, like if you're doing the bottom three, in phase two, I think light side has the lowest GP required to get 3 stars. It's 142 million, where the other 148. And then in phase three, it's dark side, which is 158, when the other two are at one. Well, actually, it's higher, isn't it? I'm thinking. Am I thinking phase two? I don't know what I'm thinking.
I think the dark side and the light side are the same. The reason that, like, when we go to phase the last day to get the 3 stars on dark side is because we're actually one zone ahead. So we'll have done
Okay.
2 dark side zones and start 3-star the third one, where we've only done the 2 mid and light side. And the mid has the highest GP requirement just because it's assuming that you're just throwing a mixture of all of your GP
Mm-hmm.
into the middle, and then keeping light and dark
Right.
separate.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, I don't want to get too. I think we've already gone pretty deep in the weeds for those who aren't leading Rise of the Empire right now. But I've definitely had some questions on it. Some folks asking, "Hey, can we do something to Rise of the Empire?" And I'm not comfortable building a big video just because like I mentioned, I was leading this before, and we were getting 17, 18, 19 stars. But I just the math was the nitty gritty work. I was going to escape me. See, if you're really going to lead your guild to just the maximum rewards, you've got to do a lot of homework on it stuff. But well, let me ask you this. Deacon. So, just in regards to the game, just separate from Rise of the Empire, unless that's where you want to go. What's the one piece of advice you would give to anybody out there in a guild or otherwise is playing the game? What's the one thing you could tell them?
So I'll say what I do. Like, I'm not the ideal guildie. I focus on, for me, what's going to generate me the most amount of crystals. So I have both meta fleets. 95% of my Omnicrons are GAC. I will be putting one on Droideka for the next territory war. But if I can generate 400 crystals a day in fleet, 240 crystals a day from being in Kyber 2, 800 crystals for every win, 200 crystals for every loss, and then 2,000 crystals for the end of the season, I'm able to take the teams that the guild needs, and I can take them up faster. So I probably won't have Inquisitors done in time for Riva attempts this time around. I'll get Second Sister to Relic 7, so I'll have Grand Inquisitor, Second Sister, and I think was it seventh sister.
Yeah.
So I'll need to do fifth brother and one other one. But then we start getting Revis shards. People are then encouraged to push further for their Grand Inquisitor, and then we start looking at down the road getting Riva.
Right.
So if especially as a mid to late game player, keep focusing on what's going to generate you the best revenue, because in the long run it'll benefit your guild better. Like, if I wanted, I could just dump a bunch of crystals and probably finish off the Jabba journey shortly, but I keep meandering off to stuff like Afra and Grand Inquisitor. So, like, make your roster as good as you can for you, and it will improve overall the guild.
Yeah, yeah. It was back in the day when Squad Arena was where the crystal income was. It was the emphasis of our guild. The very first thing you should be doing every day is try to get to the top of Squad Arena, um, because the more crystals you get into your coffers, the better off your account is going to be long term, and that benefits the guild overall. So yeah, being as high as you can be in Grand Arena and working on Fleet Arena to get to the top of that, that's the best way to get crystals, and that's going to that's going to make your account better long term, and it's just better for everybody.
Yep.
All right, Deacon. Well, we're gonna head out now. That I really appreciate the time. Thanks for taking the time to go over Rise of the Empire. Hopefully, that helped out some people who were looking at it. Without getting too deep in the weeds and making a bunch of graphics and everything, because that's not really my forte there. But if you really manage tightly what your guild has got and where you put them in platoons, and make sure you don't waste characters in platoons in platoons you can't fill. Don't waste characters in platoons you can't fill. You'll be a lot better off. So Again, thanks, Deacon. I appreciate it. I'm gonna head out. Everybody, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for watching another Dad Talks video. I'll be back soon enough. I hope you have fun with your friends and family today, and always remember, Nooch too good.